ride is high, but I'm moving on. I'm gonna be your number one. And breakfast with Bob, oh yeah.
Poncho Man. Friday edition Breakfast with Bob. We are brought to you by EAS Sports Nutrition, by Hoka One One, by Polar, the greatest heart monitors on the planet, Osca Wellness, Velo Fix, Four Seasons Hualalai, and we are airing on triathlonworld.com. My next guest, the newest inductee into the Ironman Triathlon Hall of Fame, Mr. Lew Friedland. Lew, how the heck you doing?
I'm doing great, Bob. It's been 13 years since I've been back to Kona.
Yes.
2003 was my last year, and we're just having a ball here.
So when Dr. Gills decided he wanted to buy this event, and you work with Dr. Gills forever, and he's the type of guy, when he says he wants to do something, he's going to make it happen. What were your thoughts when he said, I want to buy this athletic event?
Well, he came into our office one day and said he had been training with a guy and heard that Valerie wanted to sell the company. And he came in and said, what do you think? And actually, we were running about 15 different businesses for him at the time, and he loved triathlon. He had done Ironman many times, and Reebok had just come out with this whole CrossFit thing.
Yes.
And I thought, you know what? This might be the next big sport. And I actually encouraged him. I think he would tell you that I was the guy who encouraged him to buy the company. And Dave Yates and I came and met with Valerie Silk in Hawaii, and we actually put in a bid, and we didn't get it at first. And then the next year, 1989, we actually made a deal with them and took over right after the Iron War race in 1989.
Yes. So as the Ironman is growing, and David Yates was executive director for a while, or president, and then you became president. What were some of the issues you were dealing with when you first became president of the Ironman?
Well, there were several things, and David managed the company, and he did a really good job. There were some difficult times when we first bought it with the economics of the company, and
Sure.
we got all those settled down. And David did a really good job. And when David came in one day and said, "I'm tired. I need to move on." Dr. Gills asked me if I would, think I want to take over, and I said there are a lot of things I'm thinking about doing, and there were two or three of them that were really important to me. The first one was that in order to get to Kona as a U.S. citizen, you had to travel to another country to qualify to get to Kona.
For an event that's an American-based event.
It was an American-based event, and I believed that there was a lot of reasons. One of them was it was something that Americans ought to be able to qualify on American soil for the race. The second thing was that it was very difficult to get publicity for the race in Hawaii because all the media came out of New York.
6-hour difference.
It's a 6-hour difference. By the time you come across the finish line on the Saturday at 2 o'clock, it's Saturday at 8 o'clock in New York. We just never made the media. We
Right.
never got the coverage. And when we got people to Ironman race courses in the United States, as soon as you get there, you see it, you
Right.
get it.
Right. And all these communities, so Lake Placid, Panama City, Coeur d'Alene, Madison, Arizona, all of that occurred pretty quickly over just a few years. And I'm sure when you first started, you're like, gosh, I hope we don't saturate. I hope we don't cannibalize. I hope that these races will fill up. But they all filled up.
Well, it was, my first phone call when Dr. Gills told me I was president of Ironman was to Graham Fraser.
Right.
And I said, Graham, you actually own the rights for all the Ironman races in North America, even though we didn't allow any other than he owned Canada.
Right.
And I said, I want to put on a race in the United States, and go find us a good venue. You're a great race director, and you know what to look for. And a week or two later, he called me up and he said, I'm in Lake Placid, New York. It's an Olympic Village town. They get sports. Nobody's here the third week in July. I've met the people here, and I think I found a really good race course here. Beautiful swim, beautiful ride, and a run. And this is where I'd like to try it the first time. And I said, well, do you think anybody will actually sign up? And he said, well, the only way to know is to try it. So on a Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock, we have a press conference, because it's the only time the mayor can have a press conference in everybody in the media knows you never have a press conference at 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. I get on an airplane, I fly back to Florida, and at noon on Saturday, I get a call from the Chamber of Commerce that every hotel room in Lake Placid is full. And we said, maybe we got something going here. And we didn't have registration open or anything like that because we had just announced the race. But the
wild.
people, as soon as we announced the race and we got registration open, it immediately filled up. And I told Graham, well, let's try it again. And we went to Panama City Beach in Florida. And we decided to do a November race there. And everybody said, well, you can't do a November race. Nobody will come to a November race after Kona's,
Right.
in October. But it was the time when only 5% occupancy in the hotels, and that's when Panama City Beach wanted us. It was still good weather, the water was calm, and so we went and did Panama City, and that worked. And then with your help, we went to California.
Ironman California.
It was a big goal for me, and it was we wanted to do a full distance race, and you introduced me to the people over at Camp Pendleton. We made 9 visits over there, and the last visit was an epic visit. If you don't mind, I'll tell the story.
Sure.
I had Peter Henning make us a 9-minute video, and the 9-minute video had John and Judy Collins in it, and it had Dick and Ricky Hoyt in it, and it had some real emotional pieces. And every time I watched the video, I'd start to tear up. And I said, well, I can't go to the military base and cry in front of all these guys. And I watched it and watch it to desensitize myself. And then we go there and we have like 17 or 18 people in the room. We're in a war room. There's not a window in the place. It's pitch black. They turn off all the lights. The general comes in. They start the video. 9 minutes after the video, when the video's over, it's 9-minute video. They flash the lights on and everybody in the room's got their glasses up and they're wiping their eyes. The general says to you and I,
Yes.
we're going to make this happen, and literally turned around and walked out of the room, and we got Ironman California, and it was one of the great days of my life.
My favorite thing too is you got up and basically said, first of all, I got to be real honest. We are pretty impactful, right? We're going to block off your roads. People won't be able to get to church. There's going to be a lot of stuff going on. So if you want us, you've got to want us, because there's going to be a lot of backlash, and you got to be ready for that. And the colonel was basically, bring it on.
Bring it on.
I love that.
And it was a great, and we actually didn't, we delayed the start of that race because the interstate was still so crowded. It was like going to a football game.
People were leaving their cars on the highway.
That's right. It was, we'd never seen that many people at an Ironman race until we did California.
And my favorite was the fact that you swam the course beforehand.
I did.
With Graham Fraser. And both of you came out and said, at least seems a little long. And you know how the military is. Sir, it's exactly 2.4. 2.4, sir. It's 2.4. And on race day, guys who swim 50 minutes were swimming an hour.
Right.
And, sir, we lasered it. It's exactly 2.4 nautical miles. Yeah, that was the problem.
We figured it out. We just didn't ask the right question. That was our problem that day.
That nautical term,
But
a little bit of a problem.
It was a little bit longer than the normal Ironman race, but they brought out a cannon that was so loud it blew people away, and
they had a lot of toys on that. When we drove onto that base for the first time, and you saw the trucks and the tanks and the Zodiacs you're thinking about little red Zodiacs. Their Zodiacs are like landing ships.
Yeah. They had 500 porta potties there. I mean, right on base. So they said, just take as many of them as you want. So, and it was, and then the residents on the base, there are about 20,000 people that live on the base. They did the aid stations and they did all kinds of things. And then we merged with the city of Oceanside to finish off the race in Oceanside. And it was a great race. I know they had to shorten it after a while, but prior to 9/11, you could get on that base pretty easily, and it was I think it was an epic race.
It was an epic race.
Yeah.
So one of the other things you were dealing with, it seems like the smaller the sport, the bigger the politics. You had ITU, had Ironman, there was lawsuits, there was all sorts of stuff going on. And I think you came in and basically were like, you know what, we got to end this stuff. We're too small a sport for everybody to be at odds.
Well, the story goes a little bit like this. ITU didn't want us to use the word world championship or triathlon world championship. And there were athletes and people before me that thought that we needed to, get our place in the sun, so to speak.
Right.
And there were lawsuits and there were all kinds of things. And I had a connection with somebody who knew Dick Pound.
Right.
And I called Dick Pound. He introduced me to him. And Dick Pound, I said to him, why can't we get triathlon looked at in the Olympics? And one of the things that Valerie Silk had asked us when she sold us the event was, please get triathlon in the Olympics. That would be a great goal for me to do. And so I asked him, I said, what's going on? And he actually called Peter Uberoff. And the two of them came back to me and said, until ITU and WTC settled their disagreements and squabbles, we're not going to figure out who ought to be out there in the Olympics. So I called Les McDonald and I said, Les, you and I need to talk. And we talked on 4 or 5 occasions. What do you need? What do we need? How can we work together? How can we do better for the sport and less for the politics? And I remember this so clearly. We have a race directors weekend in Lanai every year in April.
Yep.
And we had finally come to agreement, but I couldn't tell anybody. It was confidential negotiations. And while I was in Lanai, I spent an entire day marking up a final coexistence agreement. And all the race directors and all the people, where were you all day? I was busy doing work.
Yeah.
We signed the agreement in Lanai. Les was in Canada. He signed the agreement. And about 2 weeks later, Les had a meeting with the IOC, and they agreed to allow it to become a demonstration sport. And the rest of that's history. So I'm very proud of the fact that we got that done. Got it done for Valerie and got it done for the sport of triathlon.
And then triathlon debuted in Sydney in 2000.
That's right.
And then this year we had the first ever Paralympics. Now, you and I went to the Paralympics in London a few years ago.
And China also.
How special was it going there? Because you've been a huge supporter of Challenged Athletes Foundation. We had a Challenged Athlete Foundation branch that was down in Florida that was Lew Friedland and friends.
Right.
And there was a bond that started going back to Jim McLaren and going on with Rudy and John McClain and all the different challenged athletes, that you opened up the doors to allow these amazing athletes the same opportunity. I call it an equal opportunity abuser, right? This event is an equal opportunity abuser. If you're missing a leg or you're in a chair and you want to come and see if you can make the cutoff times, bring it on.
That's right. Well, when I first got here, you were the first person I think I met in triathlon and tried to give me a little history of what was going on, and you introduced me to Jim McLaren, and it was like, man, this is the coolest part of triathlon for me. I really I think this is terrific. And as time went on, we made arrangements so that CAF could get a slot, and then that actually became 2 slots one day when Scott Tinley called me and said I gave the slot away to the wrong guy, and you know, which was a typical Scott Tinley thing, but that was okay too. And then it came down to, can we get a wheelchair out on this race course? And there was real dissension amongst the race directors and people, because some people just thought it would be unsafe for the guy in a wheelchair to be racing with all those bikes, or the people with the bikes would be unsafe for them to have to ride
or
around
for the runners in the dark and all that stuff. Yeah.
And we had some people here that said, we're willing to try it. And most everybody else had already said no.
Yeah.
We had gone to other race directors at international races, and they said, no, we're not doing it. And so we started, and of course, John McClain, after 3 tries, became the first.
97.
Under the able-bodied times. And John is still a dear friend of mine, an amazing athlete. And you know, speaking with him earlier today, he really did prove to the world that people in chairs and that, you know, can do everything that the able-bodied folks can do. And I believe that it has allowed the opening up of all kinds of sports, and of course the Paralympics is enormous now. And I've been there. I was in London. I was in China. I didn't get to go to Rio this year due to some family issues. I had a niece getting married that week. So we didn't get to Rio, but you know, to see the Paralympics grow is just tremendous, and to watch the athletes here. You've got several wheelchair racers here this year, and it's just fun to watch. And you guys, CAF just does the best work in the world. My favorite stuff.
We've raised over $75 million now. We love that.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. And actually, if you think about it, we talk about, the battles with Dave Scott and Mark Allen, and now people will talk about the battles between David Bailey and Carlos Moleda in the same breath.
Yeah.
That there was two athletes who wanted to kick the other guy's ass, and the difference was that they were using a different mode of transportation. They were using a hand cycle and a racing chair rather than a bike and running, but it was two amazing athletes who both wanted the biggest prize in sport, which is to win the Ironman Triathlon World Championship.
That could have been my favorite race. I mean, the first Ironman Kona I ever saw was the Iron War, and so
Yes.
that put a pretty high bar and everything. But watching David and Carlos race was just amazing. It was
Very,
absolutely
very
amazing
special.
to watch.
So, getting inducted in the Ironman Hall of Fame, talk a little bit about what it means, because your legacy, the amount of miles you put in, the fact that that we're in the Olympics now, the fact that we have Carlos and David and opportunities for Scott Hollenbach to be racing here. When you look back at all these special moments and now you're inducted in the Ironman Hall of Fame, what does it mean?
Well, the Ironman was something that I lived and breathed every day that I worked on it.
Yes.
It was, I tell people that I used to dream about it every night. It was just part of me.
Yes.
Somebody wrote me a note this morning thanking me that I didn't know who they were, and I told them, I said, the only issue was they actually paid me to do this. Don't tell anybody, but I would have done it for free. I mean, it was just such a joy to take what I knew was a terrific sport with a great leader like Dr. Jim Gills,
Yes.
who kept telling me, just don't screw this thing up, make it better. Let's do things to give athletes a better experience, give their families a better experience. And I'm a business guy, and first thing I had to do was figure out who my customers were. And my customers were athletes, my customers were communities, my customers were sponsors, and my customers were their families. And so we actually had ways and people that tried to do things to make each of them have a better experience.
Right.
And I haven't been here in 13 years, and I come back 13 years later, and the race course that sometimes we were criticized about modifying is the same race course they're using today. 13 years later, they had 13 years in order to change it if they didn't like it, and it's doing that. But that gave the families 6 or 7 times when they can see an athlete without
Exactly.
walking half a mile to do it,
Yep.
kind of thing. And then we did, 2-loop bike courses and 2-loop swim courses again, which gave people the ability to enjoy the sport, not just the people that were racing in it, but the media, the families, and those kind of things. So those are the things I'm most proud of, is to see those kind of people, and so many folks that are in the Hall of Fame. You as the first guy I ever met, and you taught me more about Ironman and triathlon than anybody. Peter Henning, that did all of my television, the best hire I ever did. So we could actually tell the world about it. Graham Fraser, who helped me with the races.
John
McClain, who I inducted because we needed to have somebody in a wheelchair, or an athlete like him in there. All of these people that just did so much to help me, and I'm so grateful to be in the club. I mean, I'm really honored.
There's a secret handshake. I'll teach you
I
later.
can't wait.
Lew Friedland has been our guest. Poncho Man, take us out.
Yeah, Lou.